Welcome to our final mayor's panel for this afternoon. I'm glad that we still have an active and engaged room here to finish us out. Hopefully everyone else is walking on our mobile tour. I'd like to kick this off by saying that, state agencies like UDOT and federal highways and Utah Department of Health, we can provide a lot of resources to health and transportation officials. But what really is important is leadership at the local level and someone carrying the torch for their communities to advance health, to advance wellness, to advance transportation choices in their communities, and to, really make their places quality locations to live. And so I'd like to take a moment and welcome this panel and welcome Mayor Bierman to introduce the panel and kick off our mayor's panel for the afternoon. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, thank you all for being here today. I imagine you have had a long and fun day, and you're probably in the mood for some active transportation for yourselves about now. But we will try to keep it lively here. This panel is called Where the Rubber Meets the Multi-Use Path, and it's about some success stories in our local communities, how we have incorporated active transportation into our transportation plans. And my panel here today is 4 local leaders that will talk about success stories of their town. We've got 5 elected officials and only about 10 minutes each, so we're going to try to keep this quick. I'm going to let them each introduce themselves and talk about 1 or 2 unique or interesting innovations in their communities. So I think it's only appropriate we start with Utah's newest city and the new mayor, Mayor Silvestrini. Would you like to give us an introduction and talk about what you are doing in Mill Creek that's innovative?
Sure. I was so disappointed to hear Cameron in an earlier session tell me that Mill Creek is no longer Utah's newest city. But there's a new town, but it's not really a city, right? But anyway, I'm proud to be mayor of Mill Creek, and it's a city of 60,000. It's actually a pretty large municipality in Utah. We've been a city for a little bit more than a year and a half, and being a new city, we had to not only form a new city, but also do all the other things that cities do. And it's been really exciting and really fun. But one of the scary things about it is when you form a new municipality, you don't really know what your revenue is exactly. You kind of have estimates from studies, but until that money starts coming in, you're not really confident about that. So we launched our city and wanted to try to do things immediately to show people the benefit of having a new municipality. And I wanted to advance some of the things that I heard both in our campaign to become a city and in my campaign for mayor, and also in things that we were learning as we immediately launched into an effort to write a new general plan and do some things for our city that hadn't been done before. I heard over and over from our residents that they were supportive of active transportation, that they wanted to see more sidewalks and more bike lanes, more trails. So that was, that was easy because we were new and we were listening to that stuff. So the challenge for us was really, what can we do that has some impact, that's fiscally responsible and doesn't cost a lot of money? And we ran into the conversions of a couple of things here. We had tons of traffic complaints about a big collector street that runs through our Mount Olympus neighborhood, Jupiter Drive and Brockbank, and people were complaining about cars driving too fast on that road. That road was on the ATIP plan, the transportation plan that Salt Lake County put together before we incorporated, to be basically a bicycle, part of our bicycle infrastructure. So what we did is we used the magic of paint. Paint is pretty cheap, and so for traffic control, for traffic calming, Jupiter's a relatively wide street. The speed limit on it is 25. We painted the travel lane really narrow to give the impression that it was a much narrower street than it actually is. So we put white lines on both sides, and then we striped bike lanes. We got bike lanes out of that just by putting them in there. So we're still actually painting the bike lanes. Like, if you drive up there, you won't see all of that, but it's being done. But it's giving us bike lanes and a space for people to walk where there are no sidewalks and ride bikes. And I think it's a success story where we've been able to actually deliver something to our community on very, very low budget. The other thing that we did that I'm really proud of is on the eastern side of our community, we front right up on the mountains at the mouth of Mill Creek Canyon. The Bonneville Shoreline Trail is expected to go through there someday. We have open space at Granger Peak, but we became aware of an opportunity for additional open space really before we incorporated, before we had any money. So we went out and solicited donations to purchase that open space. And working with Salt Lake County Open Space Committee and the Salt Lake County Council, and dangling our donations that we'd raised, about $16,000, we were able to convince them to invest in that, buy that property. Mill Creek purchased the conservation easement, so we added 25.5 acres to our inventory of open space in Mill Creek, and that's along the pathway that the Bonneville Shoreline Trail can proceed through an alignment that takes it up into Mill Creek Canyon by the pipeline trail, if you're familiar with that. So anyway, we've been doing stuff right away and on a low budget with donations and paint.
Outstanding. I forgot to mention in the format, we are going to hold the audience questions till the end. I'm going to ask a drill down or two, but please make note of any questions you have, and we'll circle back to our panelists when they've all spoken. But Mayor, I'm curious, you as a new mayor, I can only imagine the pressures to do everything at once. Your town wants you to probably have many priorities, and I'm curious what their response has been to your making active transportation a priority, what sort of feedback you've gotten, and if you've got good support from your council on it.
So first, I have great support from my council on it. One of our goals in becoming a city was basically to have better representation and to have a seat at the table on a number of boards and things like that. So I invested in coming to Wasatch for regional council meetings, and actually, I guess the new guy, it's the easy thing to do to say, here, you want to do this? So I'm the chair of the Active Transportation Committee of WFRC, and my council supported me on that. I know my residents support this just because I've heard that from them. You know, our community is a very outdoor-oriented community. We have Mill Creek Canyon in our backyard. A lot of people choose to live there because of the proximity of our city to downtown, but also to the mountains. So I know I have support for that, and I think the support that I've heard is the feedback has been terrific. I think I've had one person who on this bike lane project we did said, "Why are you doing that? Nobody is going to want to ride there. People want to ride on Wasatch Boulevard." And I asked that person who I knew was a spandex bicyclist, what about your spouse? What about your family? Well, yeah, they might ride on that. So a lot of it's just engaging with people and explaining the benefit of active transportation, and also the fact that we need facilities for people that may not be as confident, on a roadway.
Okay. Well, I'm guilty of being one of those spandex bicycle riders, and certainly appreciate the bike lanes. But one thing that I've heard from a lot of folks along the Wasatch Front is a desire to complete the Bonneville Shoreline Trail. And I think you were wise right away to jump in and purchase the property to help do that. Certainly, many of us look back in our communities and wish long ago we had acquired more property. But could you give us an update on where the trail is and what challenges you still face?
So sure. So we have basically acquired the property from the mouth of Parley's Canyon, almost to Mill Creek. There's one last section, and I saw Councilwoman Amy Winterden in here. I'm going to have to hit her up later, but there's one last section of about 136 acres that we need to acquire to be able to complete the trail basically from Parley's to Mill Creek Canyon. There are also some sections through our community south of that where we have a couple of other pieces of private property to acquire, but it's a priority for us to work on that and do that. And a number of the members of my community are on that committee or are active in trails, and we're working with them. They bug me every day about buying the Rain Clouds parcel, which is the next piece we hope to get.
Nice. Well, thank you. So, Commissioner Milne from Tualatin County, you are up next. Hoping you could give us an intro and also talk a little bit about your new active transportation plan.
Yeah, good afternoon, and thanks everybody for being here. Thanks for the introduction. So I've been on the Tualatin County Commission for about 5.5 years, and we're a community that's going through quite an aggressive transitional phase. Out of 3,069 counties in the United States, we're the 7th fastest growing. That puts some pressure on us to provide some niceties for folks that are moving in, while not necessarily having the budget yet. You know, 75.6% of our population, our adult age population, commutes to the Wasatch Front every day. So with such an aggressive amount of folks that are commuting out, they see and experience what the mayor has just noted in other communities and then come home and would desire to have that as well, but we don't necessarily have the commercial tax base that a lot of the Wasatch Front does to afford it. One of the oddities about property tax elements in Utah is that all too often residential properties cost more than they're paying in residential property taxes. But that's a challenging message as a politician to give somebody who's thinking of the thousands they pay in taxes, that that aggregated amount doesn't necessarily pay for enough to go out and acquire the right-of-ways that we were talking about. And in one of the breakout sessions this morning, the very first one that I attended, it was interesting to note what sometimes in an isolated sort of way we think we're inventing the wheel for the first time, and that some of these folks, they want the nice things and then they realize that the path is going to come through their property or next to it, and then they worry all of a sudden of, well, that's going to change the character of my, my rural lifestyle. It's been very refreshing to be here today and to listen to you guys talk about some of your experiences, because far too often in Tooele County, we aren't having this discussion in the robust sort of way that many of you have been addressing for years. It's new for us. And so what we're trying to do with regards to active transportation is learn from y'all. And it's enlightening to hear Mayor Silvestrini talk about the opportunity of something as inexpensive as paint to create some bike lanes and some opportunities. I want to give a shout out to the Wasatch Front Regional Council. I know that Muriel, who spent a lot of years there, and I know I've seen Jory, and there we go, Christie's in the back giving the fist pump, and Andrew, because they've helped us work through this in a way that for some of their member counties, like Salt Lake County, it's a convener that brings folks like me that may not have a lot of experience into the room and say, we don't have to think we're inventing the wheel. Like, we have the opportunity for some of these conversations. So between grants that they've offered us that have helped us with that master plan, because heretofore we've never had one. We've never had to address it. We've had a lot of disjointed communities that have focused in a very rural-esque sort of way on thinking that they're isolated. And these kind of, I love that Mr. Norris during lunch created some new phrases, it sounds like, and now the spandex bicyclist is going to stand out of my mind. Because coming from rural Utah, I think that's a pretty good visual, or not. I'm not really sure. That soundbite's going to come back to haunt me. I can hear it now. Anywho, where was I? Anyhow, these
your mind up.
yeah. So awkward now. So we had these disjointed communities that thought of themselves as, thank you, buddy.
Wipe the sweat off.
That thought of themselves as more ATV connected because of the rural lifestyle that we have, because we've got a lot of agriculture, and not so much the suburbanite feel of what that phrase that I conjured up with the spandex cyclist meaning, but Stansbury Park, where we've got a pathway that kind of makes a crescent down and to the left. That second red circle is Stansbury Park. And it is the second largest community in Tooele County, and it's unincorporated. So, sitting here and appreciating mayors and hearing that Mayor Silvestrini represents a community that was recently incorporated just 2 years ago. Stansbury Park had the incorporation vote before them, and 2-1 said no, which totally floored the county. We thought it was going to be 2-1 in favor of. And then we thought they might be addressing some of these things independently. But they are the ones that definitely see a lot of the commutership, and they see that rural lifestyle, and then say, but we want something like we see where we work. And so they bring home these ideas, and of course we represent them as much as we do the more rural areas like Erta, which is sandwiched in between Stansbury Park and Tooele, and having to coalesce and sometimes act like Wasatch Front Regional Council, where we convene sometimes communities with a very different feel and a very different feel of what success is going to look like in the next 5, 10, or 15 years for them. So with the help of our health department, who we asked to oversee the use of that grant money, we've come up with the transportation plan, or active transportation plan, that addresses for the first time, how can we connect some of these seemingly disparate communities? And we've made some recent inroads, even just this week, the finishing of paving of a 9-foot wide trail that is somewhat next in proximity to a high school, and a motor vehicle restricted path that we've done just this summer that was a one-way motorized road before. Now we've closed it to vehicle traffic and made it part of a pathway, and we've used this 9-foot wide trail to connect from that to the high school and a neighborhood nearby. So for us, it's very much in the beginning stages, and it's been refreshing to hear from all of you some of the experiences you've gone through so that we can learn from it and hopefully move quicker than maybe some of you guys did when you started it off where you're at.
Well, Commissioner, I'm curious, even up in our neck of the woods in Summit County, we've got a mixture of very rural communities and we have urbanized areas. They're small towns, but we're going to call them urban because they're more dense. But I'm curious, there's a lot of differences in opinion as to how we approach transportation between those communities. And I think you had your first check-in with your community earlier this month. You had an open house that you Drew, what are you hearing? How's the response been, and what's the difference between your towns and your ag areas?
Great question. I'm going to be challenged to stay on topic because there was so much covered in that town hall meeting that did not just deal with active transportation, but there still seems to be a bit of a cultural divide, right? The folks that have always lived there their whole lives, and maybe their family, their stock of family originally settled Tooele County, and they're worried about the suburbanites. They're worried about that growth. That in the second breakout session today, I went to the affordable housing element, and we had a commission meeting last night that was 4 hours long, from 7 to 11 at night, and 2 of those 4 hours centered around these kind of growth issues that I know that we're all facing. And as we talk about active transportation specifically in that town hall meeting, those from the rural areas feel as though the suburban growth pressure is changing the character of what they've enjoyed or they moved out there for, which is in and of itself a little bit ironic, because some of them will say, well, when I moved out here 2 years ago, well, you were part of the growth wave, but they don't conceptualize it that way. But it's true, right? And that's what's hard for an elected representative to hear, because you want to respect those folks' wishes and how it adapted to the master plan then, but we've got these challenges between an us versus them mentality. And that, I think, is it's awkward, because in the more suburbanite areas, the build-out's already happened and the pathways aren't as clear. In the rural areas, we can do some corridor preservation, but they're the community that supports it the least because they look at it as a suburbanite kind of thing. So that's kind of the awkward mix that we've had come out of these town hall meetings in the last year.
And I'm curious, from a funding standpoint, how much of the burden falls on the county versus are your cities and towns participating?
Is anyone from the cities in Tooele County here? Again, because it's new territory and everybody is facing those growth constraints like we are in the unincorporated area, the cities are too. Tooele City recently did something with the benefit of a grant, like Mayor Silverstrini mentioned, in the same width of asphalt, and then used paint to creatively create some bike lanes. So they did that with a grant. Tooele County has been able to do some with the grant. This 9-foot, paved trail we're doing out of general fund monies, and we've got an MOU with the school district and some local resident support, which always takes time in politics. Coming from the private sector, one of the things I used to do fairly openly was criticize the slowness of government before I became one of these government bureaucrats. And now I get it, because to bridge that gap when you've got to bring people along who feel threatened by that shift in influence, it takes time. It takes time when you've had deeply seated beliefs for a long time, like I just mentioned in the us versus them of rural versus suburban. It takes time, and so that's where the slowdown occurs. We've been able, with the school district, that neighborhood, to close down the road called Rabbit Lane that was a one-way vehicular traffic road. So it's a mix. I guess that's the short answer. It's a mix, but we are trying to lead out with a combination of grants and the county's general fund money to make it happen, as well as the health department. Our health department, being, an autonomous body to some degree, has been very receptive because they recognize, as Kim Klossing mentioned in one of the breakout sessions this morning with our health department, that the health department is looking at active transportation, much like Mr. Norris said during lunch, as kind of a holistic approach. So we're trying to bring in a bunch of different funding sources, seeing it more as a collaborative partnership. And sometimes the mix means different parties have to pay more than they were originally comfortable with. But if it's that important to your citizens, you got to figure out a way.
Well, thank you, Commissioner Milne. It sounds like you guys are forward thinking on this, and I know that's never easy. But I think the next generation of constituents will appreciate it down the road. So, Mayor Kaufusi, I think it's going to be your job to move us away from spandex.
That's right. I plan to do that.
If you can lead off with an intro, and then I believe you have a video
I have a
for
little
us.
clip I'd love to show.
And I do have one question about that clip. Are you going to be making an appearance as a Jedi Knight in this one?
I want to. I wish I could do more Jedi Knight commercials and advertising. We're going to work on that. There's going to be follow-ups. That got a lot of hits, so we are going to follow up on that one.
For any of you wondering what we're talking about, Provo has a great history of injecting humor into the videos for community engagement, and outgoing Mayor Curtis did an appropriate handoff of the lightsaber.
We did. We climbed mountains and ran and acted emotional to music. We did the whole thing.
Well, with that, can you introduce yourself?
Yes, so my name is Mayor Kaufusi, and I am the Provo mayor. I am the first female mayor in Provo and the 45th mayor. So there's a lot going on down there. I go to work and I look at all the great people I work with, and I just think they don't even know what to do with me. I had one of my city planners say, "What is all that racket, Mayor?" I said, "That's called women. You guys have never had it, but get used to it because we talk and we get stuff done at the same time. It's like a miracle." But I am thrilled. I'm thrilled to be here, and I'm a huge advocate for active transportation. And I want to just show a little clip, and then I'll talk about my piece of this presentation.
Great.
What's up? I'm Aaron.
Hey, I'm Monica.
So, great news. Starting this August, valid UVU or BYU campus IDs will now double as a free UTA pass.
That means you'll be able to ride frontrunner, tracks, and buses for free. So wherever you're going, get ready to avoid traffic and the hassle of parking.
Thank you. Here's the best part. Starting August 13th, UTA will be launching their latest and greatest innovation, the Utah Valley Express, or UVX.
And for half its route, the Utah Valley Express has its own lane, and it's expected to arrive every 6 minutes during peak times. These new and extra long UVX buses can fit into anyone's schedule to get you where you need to go fast. Think about all your favorite places: BYU, UVU, University Place Mall, and Provo City Center. They're all connected by the Utah Valley Express line for your convenience. And you can also connect up with the Front Runner and take trips to downtown Salt Lake City. It is the best way to go to big events, concerts, shopping, restaurants, and everything else.
So, when you're headed to class, ride UVX to skip the hassle of parking. Cut through traffic on game day. Or use it to take a day trip with friends.
And here's the plus. Each UVX bus takes up to 80 cars off the road. These buses are also hybrid electric vehicles that reduce air pollutants. That means less congestion and better air quality for all of us.
So, come August, get on board free.
feel like I'm the mayor of the best city when I see that. I'm so proud of Provo and the direction we're going with active transportation and trying to get people off the road. That's our goal. Get people off the road and out of their cars and using our public transportation. A couple questions that they asked me to kind of address was, one was, what have we run into since we opened on August 13th? One thing that we've run into is the center stations aren't quite done. So the designated lanes aren't being used. And so the buses are having to stop on the sides of the road, which is causing a little bit of, I get a lot of calls, but I keep telling them, hang in there with us. When this is done, it's going to be really good. And we're planning to have all the designated lanes and stations up by the first of the year. So then all those buses will be off the road and in their designated lanes, which will be huge. Something fantastic is when they opened on August 13th, the whole deal was they did free transportation for the students at UVU, BYU, their families, and their children, which then we piggybacked with getting free transportation for everyone in the city of Provo. It is unbelievable. And so the two best words in Provo right now are free and frequent, because those buses are free and they come frequently, and it is working so well. When school started, we were at about 1,000 riders, and we've increased by 400% just in this couple weeks. So it is amazing. For the football game, the first football game, we had about 1,200 to 1,300 people use it. And for this last BYU football game, we were over 9,000. So people are figuring it out. On a side note, I love riding it. First of all, they're new and they're quiet. I mean, you could like take a nap. It is so beautiful, air conditioned, smells new, and they just hum. But when I was riding it the other day, a cute little gentleman got on, and he was fairly old and just darling and had a cane. And he went up to the bus driver, got on, and just stood there trying to shove dollars into the bus driver's hands. And the bus driver was like getting a little flustered, so I stood up and I said, "Sir, this is free." And he was like, "Nothing's free. We pay for it. Nothing's free." And I said, "Come and sit down by me. I'm the mayor of Provo, and I'm going to ride with you until you get off and tell you how come this is free." And he just had such a hard time not giving his $4 to someone. But he did sit down, and we discussed it and talked about it, and he was just, I mean, once people try it, they're just hooked. It is fantastic. Something that we've focused on, too, is everyone talks about the last connecting mile. UVX meets all of that because it is like the last connecting mile. It stops frequently. It goes into neighborhoods. It goes into businesses. It goes to both universities. It goes down to the cities. It really does hit all the major areas. And the best part is it connects right up with Front Runner. And you can get on Front Runner at the UVU station or the Provo station, and off you go. It's fantastic. So we are loving it and feel very, very lucky and happy to have it in our city.
Well, Mayor, it's good to see you so excited about this program, and it certainly seems to be making a big dent. And I think we're all watching closely because we hope you wildly succeed, because
We
it's going
want
to
to.
be.
We will.
Yeah.
We will.
Hopefully it'll be a model we use all across the state. But with any new program, there's usually a few surprises. No matter how much planning's done, there are a few things that you don't expect that maybe bumps in the road, so to speak. Can you talk a little bit about
Yeah.
what some of the unanticipated challenges have
So
been?
probably, and it just seems funny, I kind of talked about it, the biggest challenge is convincing people that it's free. People are having such a hard time grasping that. And they're worried, like, I don't have a card, what do I need to get on it? And so getting that message out has been a little tricky, saying it's just, please step on it. You don't have to do anything, you don't have to pull anything out, just step on it. So that's been a little bit of something that I didn't expect. I didn't think people would be so concerned with what does free mean. Everyone's just so curious. So that's been interesting. And the other thing is just the fact that we had to open it a little bit earlier than it was completed. So we've had a lot of feedback from constituents and people on the road saying these stupid buses, they're so big. And I just keep telling them, hang in there, because those designated lanes are going to make a huge difference. So those have been two big issues we've had. Other than that, you can't beat frequency and free. Those are two key components.
Outstanding. Well, Park City's had a free bus system for 40 years now, and sometimes
Stop.
people just
What?
take it for granted. And I always
I
suggest,
didn't know that. That's fantastic.
Well, sometimes people don't value free. I actually think it's key in transportation. I encourage my peers to do that. But I often joke when we send out our newsletters, we always send coupons for a free bus ride so people see the value in it.
They do. They want something tangible so they
Yeah.
feel comfortable stepping on and using the transportation.
Just a final question for you. I know this project was fairly controversial when it was proposed. And can you tell me how it's being received by the doubters and your residents now?
So the doubters are going to doubt. They just doubt no matter what. I was doing I'm doing a listening tour right now around the city, and I was in one of the neighborhoods the other night, and we're talking about the bond and police and fire, and this lady just stood up and grabbed the microphone and said, "I hate BRT. I hate you for liking it," and just went off on it. And I just thought, you got to be kidding me. We are so moved on past this, but there are those that are still really hung up on it. But I think the majority of buy-in is coming, and so they're becoming the outliers more than anything, and it's really nice.
That's good to hear.
Yeah.
Okay, one more panelist. Commissioner Milburn from Davis County. Can you, my understanding that you and the county have been involved as a convener to facilitate regional discussions on active transportation.
We have, and before I even get into that, in the south part of the county, we're beginning the discussion about doing a BRT route, and I want your email and contact information, Mayor, because I want you to come up and help us pitch this, because your enthusiasm, I think I can get it sold. So
Okay, I'm there.
I'm excited, and also being a board member of UTA, I'm excited to hear your enthusiasm and the success that's going on there. Davis County is kind of unique in the sense that we, maybe just a little background on what Davis County is and who we are. We are the smallest geographic county out of the 29 in the state of Utah, but the third largest in population. So we have quite a number of people. We're pushing 350,000. And we have difference between, say, Tooele and Davis County is we have very little unincorporated county. Most of our county is incorporated into 15 cities. And so therein lies both a challenge and an opportunity. And the role that the county plays is we're not there to tell and drive and necessarily lead out in exactly what a project is or things of that nature, but help facilitate the discussion and provide a forum by which entities and communities can communicate and make sure that we're connecting appropriately. And in fact, that's our county motto is Davis Connects You, and we're all about connecting people and resources and things of that nature. And maybe another challenge that we have amongst those 15 cities is there's a wide spectrum of interest and knowledge about what active transportation is. Some are very engaged and have plans in place, and it's very well received, and some that are still trying to understand where it fits within the confines of their city. So we try to bring everybody to the table, and we have a very active, led by the county, active transportation committee, of which folks can come together and they share ideas and help one another. And our health department is also very active in that discussion and engaged in that discussion. Speaking of things that are maybe game changers or things that have really made an impact, particularly most recently, revolves around funding. And of course, it doesn't matter what project or what issue that we're involved in, the dollars matter. And having resources available to move things forward. And in Davis County, the implementation of Proposition 1, or the fourth sales tax corridor that's for transportation-related projects, And the aspect of Proposition 1 being so open and a broad variety of things of which it can be utilized for, everything from finishing a sidewalk and connecting, that last mile piece to service-oriented things or to trails or things of that nature. And the thing that, as a county, at the county level, that we're really engaged in and we're excited to help and be a participant in is out of that Proposition 1, there are some funds that are under the control of the county, and we're in the process and are granting those funds or partnering with cities on regionally significant projects, whether that be, I can think of between West Bountiful and Centerville. In Centerville, there at Parish Lane, you have the movie theaters and everything else of that nature, but just a bit to the south, you have communities and no sidewalk there, but we've been able to help partner and complete that or put that sidewalk in place, so now people can use active transportation. They can get there without having to get in the car or feel safe or things of that nature. We have, of course, some major regionally significant trails, the Legacy Highway Trail. And I think one of the things that we've learned there is when those major projects come in, and thank you to our friends at UDOT and the foresight to put that trail in when the Legacy Highway was built. But maybe a lesson learned there is, and where we're coming together and as we operate and maintain that facility, is that hadn't really been worked out when it was put in. But then all of a sudden it's like you have that running through 5 different cities and a portion of unincorporated, and each city is on their piece. They're kind of going, well, yeah, I have some funding to put an overlay on that or fill the cracks or take care of the weeds, and maybe another city doesn't have that funding. And then pretty soon you have a regionally significant trail that is in different states of good repair. And that's where, as a county, we can come in and we're trying to take the lead and be engaged on regionally significant things, projects and trails and things of that nature that cross boundaries and that impact more than just one specific neighborhood.
Well, I'm always impressed by the challenges county commissioners face, because as mayors, we only have to get engagement and support from one community, but you have to bring multiple communities along that I imagine are very different places on the spectrum. Can you talk about how you are able to keep your varying cities and towns and unincorporated areas moving along towards a comprehensive plan, even though they probably want to move at different paces and have different priorities?
I would say that's the case and not the case. In a lot of ways, most of the residents in the county, you can live in Centerville, Bountiful, Woods Cross, West Bountiful. For the most part, you really don't know where the boundary is, except for your zip code and what you put on your bill that comes. I think it really is a matter of providing a forum and keeping an open line of communication. And like I said, some city leaders or even staff might be at different levels of interest or different levels of sophistication, but it's providing that opportunity to know that the door's open and trying to outreach. And like I said, we have a monthly active transportation group hosted at the county, and you have everything from elected officials to staff people within the city or the county or other interested parties. I know UDOT's there, UTA's there, Trails and Pathway folks, and it's getting the people that are passionate together and generating that excitement, then hopefully they can spread that out to their individual cities.
Great. Sounds like a good approach. Thank you, Commissioner. I was asked to speak a little bit about what Park City's working on right now. And first of all, I want to put in context a little. Park City is a town of 8,000 people, and yet traffic and congestion is typically a top 2 issue in our community, which just seems silly for a small town, but truth be told, we're not really a small town. Our population is not reflective of how we have to operate as a city. So we have twice that many second homes as we have primary residents. We have 15,000 people a day that commute into town to work, and then we have our tourists. So even on a slow day like today in the fall, town is operating with about 35,000 people in town. When we have peak times like Christmas or Sundance, we range from 60 to 80,000 people in town. So our challenge is really to create a small town environment but deal with mid-sized city traffic. And it's something that early on, it got good support from the community. Back in the 70s, we implemented our first public transit system. And we were fortunate enough to be able to put that. We have a bed-based tax, we have a resort tax, and we put aside a large portion of that money to have an effective public transportation system. And that helps mitigate the impacts on our residents. But about a decade ago, it started to overwhelm the system. We began to get pressure from the county that they wanted to be part of the system, so we expanded the district out to include the whole greater Park City area. And then recently, we've gotten particularly aggressive with a couple of programs I wanted to highlight. And one of them is our Electric Express. It is not a full-on BRT, so I'd call it a BRT light, but we have 6 electric buses. Have any of you ridden on an electric bus before? Okay, you got to come up and try one. It's not quite as fun as a powder day, but it's almost worth the trip. This does not feel like typical public transportation. You know, most people think buses are something other people should ride on. These are high tech. They're carbon fiber. They're silent. They're fun. They're fast. And we have 6 of them zipping around every 10 minutes on our main entry corridor. And so you can see the numbers there, but in our year to date, we've carried over 30,000 people on those. We're running them on a 12.5-mile loop, 17 hours a day. And that has made a dent in things, but it leaves that first mile and last mile. Other than the old town and historic portions of Park City, we're fairly spread out. It feels very suburban, and so those are areas that are very difficult to reach, and that's why we have relied on an active transportation program. I should back up a little bit and talk about, in the past, we have really tried to address the tourist needs. We haven't really worked on most of the locals' needs because it has been so difficult, and our locals tend to be spread out. So those that live in the downtown get to benefit from our system, but our system doesn't go deep into the neighborhoods. That is something we are trying to change right now, and one of the measures we've done to implement that is this e-bike share. So we have over 400 miles of trails in town. We have a very active population, yet it's hard to get our residents to commute to work. And the reason why is we have grades up to 15%. We're a narrow valley and we have steep roads. So we decided a traditional bike share program was not going to be effective. We implemented, I think we're the first city in the country to implement an e-bike share program, and it's been wildly successful. It was so successful when we launched it, we had a lot of trouble because of the 60 bikes, they weren't getting charged. So people were taking these bikes out so frequently there wasn't enough time to sit in the charger and recharge before the next user. So we were spending time running around picking up stranded riders and recharging those bikes. We doubled the fleet working with some of our local partners. The Chamber has contributed money towards it. IHC has contributed money. And right now we're working with UTA on a Tiger grant to generate some more money for the program because even with 118 bikes at this point, there's not enough. It's been wildly successful. And it has been a little bit tourist-centric, although we're seeing a lot of our locals use them. But what we're finding is our locals are riding on one and they're saying, I got to have one of these, and they're going out and buying their own e-bikes. So it is having the same effect. With that, Amy, you want to ask me a question? I didn't plan for that. No, we'll just switch straight to questions from the audience. So what would you like to hear from our panelists?
Not all at once.
Oh, come on, don't leave us hanging.
They want to get out and ride a bike.
Anyone? See a lot of.
Kind of.
Over here. Say your name.
I'm Angela Chaburka. I'm an Ogden City Council person. And I have a question about the BRT in Provo. Will it be free forever, or is this just a trial period?
So with the universities, they're on a 10-year contract. They're paying $1 million a year, UVU and BYU. And the citizens, we have a federal grant that's only 3 years. I say that's only, but we're just so grateful to have 3 years of free ridership. And then I think when that comes up, we'll look into applying for another 3 years. And we'll just do everything we can to keep it going. Someday it's got to make money though, right? I mean, someday we have to let them charge us. But not right now. We're loving it being free.
Oh, come on, are you guys shy after lunch?
One up here in front.
Yeah.
Muriel.
So this would be probably for Mayor Bierman. I'm curious with the electric bikes, what challenges you've interacted both on your streets and your trail network, and what kind of speeds they have, and what interactions you've seen.
Yeah, thanks. That's a great question. They have been challenging to incorporate into the community. There have been some safety issues. We've pressed hard because there are a lot of kids that are renting them, not wearing helmets, reckless behavior. Fortunately, we haven't had any major accidents, but we fear we might. So we've really tried to crack down on age and promote helmet use. We've also had folks stray out onto our trail system, which the bikes aren't built for that, nor is it allowed. So that's been problematic. Charging and maintenance has been a challenge, but we have a great partnership with Betawan, which is the company that's providing these, and they actually this year, when we doubled our fleet, they now have a full-time mechanic that travels around and deals with any challenges with the bikes. One of the unforeseen things is we're pretty proud of our trail system, both our paved trails and our dirt trails around town, but we have some holes in that. We have some areas, particularly in the core of town, where we haven't had the easements we need or been able to put tunnels in and connections. And we find as you get less experienced riders that don't know the back alleys or the side streets, they're running into those areas, and it's becoming an increasing problem where they're interacting with traffic. So I think it's going to require us to step up our game and add a few pedestrian tunnels and some new bike lanes in areas that have been exposed as weaknesses.
Yeah.
For Commissioner Milne, you said that you're running into the problem of your residential areas not being financially sustainable because they don't sort of pay for the infrastructure that's connected to them. Have you looked into different models that may help them, maybe like denser models that are more walkable or those kinds of things, or maybe not high density, but maybe something slightly denser? Have you looked into other ways of financing the things that citizens are demanding?
Yeah, we have. I alluded to a 4-hour marathon meeting that we had last night, and 2 hours of it being the community in between Stansbury Park, second largest community, again, unincorporated, so we have direct oversight in Tooele, and they're feeling that suburban pressure, right? We had a presentation by a developer last night who wants to go down to 3rd-acre lots. So for many of you in the metro area, that's going to seem like a pretty large lot. But IRTA is full of A20 or agricultural no less than 20 acres, or RR5, rural residential 5 acres. To them, a 3rd-acre lot is density, and it's high density to them, which is ironic because it's always relative, right? Like a lot of experiences in human life, it's relative. And folks that moved in 30 years ago, when they moved in on a 5-acre ranchette to the A20 zone around them, that was high density. And I live on a 6,000 square foot lot, starter home kind of, situation. So I'm the crux of the problem because I've only been there for 20 years. I'm a transplant from the metro area. And so it's always relative. And this developer last night gave this presentation. What I know that you'll all love is that what the county commission has been trying to negotiate with that developer and 4 others simultaneously for a few hundred homes each is some green space and interconnectivity, even with where there's some cul-de-sacs, having some interconnectivity with back lots, with trails. And so here we think we're doing a good job that I think most of you can appreciate, but my citizens aren't here in this room, and they're not necessarily appreciative of it in the same way, because they're looking at that as density that changes fundamentally the character of 5-acre ranchettes. But in order to make that green space sacrifice worthwhile, as well as some water and sewer infrastructure that most of us might take for granted in suburbia, those 5-acre ranchettes all are on septic systems, and they have their own well, or they share a well between 2 to 4 properties. And so in order for a developer to make that worthwhile, to have a bona fide system that ties into more municipal type service, they need that density to defray the cost among more residential households, right? So it's a challenge, and I don't know quite how to address it. I mean, I'm being honest, that's one of those things that I love about Wasatch Front Regional Council being a convener, because I know that we're not the first ones to invent the wheel, but I also know that the growth is a huge problem for us as a state, and we're all kind of going through it together. So while I love getting together with all of you because misery loves company, hey, I got company, but we also have to educate the populace to address some of that, and I haven't quite figured it out honestly yet.
Mayor.
Yeah, if I can add to that, municipalities are constantly trying to balance their revenue sources from, sales tax, property tax, fees. It's always a challenge to build this kind of infrastructure because it costs money. But there are a couple of things that we need to educate people about. Number one, a lot of these facilities, we build roads and we don't really think about it, but we could build trails with the same philosophy, or bike lanes with the same philosophy that we build roads with. They're a mode of transportation. And even with the BRT, nobody would suggest that you have to pay a fee when you get on I-15, right? But that's an infrastructure that we provide for people without expecting to get money back necessarily. The other thing that I think that is a real challenge to us is just, it's really an education thing, but we need to, it's a struggle in local government really to talk to our constituents about the fact that our state is growing so fast and we need to build density some places. Density has benefits because if you allow density, it does generate additional things. We're going through a conversation in Mill Creek right now about allowing some developers additional density in our new town center area in exchange for them providing amenities to the city, which will include some bike paths, a public plaza, and a park strip along Highland Drive. They're willing to provide those things to the city if we allow them some additional units, okay? And so we have gone out to our community and had several public meetings about that and talking about that trade-off and talking about the fact that with a growing valley, with a growing population, unless we spill it all out to Tooele County, or I'm not sure Davis County can handle much more, but we have to build more density in our community and do it in the right places, protect the places that we cherish that are not so dense, but put it in those places, and that's how you get the money for some of these amenities that people want to see. Whether it's tax increment or whether it's, we don't exact it from developers, but developers are sometimes willing to provide things in exchange for being able to make more money through the density.
And just to close that thought, like that's what we thought we were negotiating with these developers, but last night the public nearby most closely affected by the change in character have recoiled because they're thinking, I don't really care for those amenities. I didn't move here for those amenities, right? But we know that the folks that would benefit from this and this growth that's going to happen anyway would love it. They're just not here to speak at our public meetings yet because they don't live there yet. And that's a difficult conversation to have with people that live there now, thinking that I'm a property taxpayer now, and then saying and balancing that against the developer's interest who, well, they own that land and they're a property taxpayer right now too, but they're one voice among a few hundred that gather versus the hundreds that could balance that out after they've moved in because the property's been developed. So yeah, I love what the mayor has said, and that's what we're trying to do, but it really is so much of an education campaign. And it's just a tough conversation to have.
Okay. We have time for one or two more questions.
Yeah,
Okay.
Regarding the e-bikes in Park City, what about during the winter time? How does that affect the program and ridership?
We put them away November through April. So just there's too much snow and not all of our paths are cleared, but we do take them as late in the season as possible, which unfortunately has been getting longer and longer lately. That was a short one, so I think we have time for one more.
All right.
I just had a quick question for Davis County. I know, at least I understand that Salt Lake County has a bicycle plan to help all the different cities' bicycle plans interconnect well. Does Davis County have the same thing or not?
We're in the process of working on that. We do have, we have, the county's produced a map that shows all the trails, whether they're biking or walking or hiking, et cetera. But this is part of that active transportation committee that's being stood up and meeting, is to be more formal in making sure that everybody knows what they're doing in individual cities and making sure that we're making those connections. And once again, the role and where the county really comes to bear can be on that financial side in partnering in actually making those connections and getting those projects completed.
Okay, well, I am going to put a wrap on this, but I just wanted to make a little commentary. So I'm not originally from Utah, but it's been my home for a very long time. And one of the things that's always impressed me about this state is our willingness to look far into the future and plan. And we have seen and heard some great innovative ideas today on planning for active transportation. But I do want to speak to all of you because we're here to be a mouthpiece, to speak on these, to articulate a vision, to convene, but we rely on all of you to help put that vision together, to give us the technical support, and really help us to be bold. So I encourage you to be bold, help us be great leaders, and let's keep this topic moving forward. And with that, I'd like to thank our panelists today for their vision, for their leadership, and for taking the time to speak with us.
Great. Well, that concludes our first Move Utah Summit. Thank you so much for participating. I hope that today was energizing, it was refreshing, and it provided you with a lot of resources and ideas to take back to your own communities. And I expect each and every one of you to be a leader and a champion for active transportation in your communities, in your workplaces, and within life. So thank you so much for your attendance. We'll be sending out a survey to get your feedback, understand what we can do more to be more engaged with you, if you liked the content or not. And please give another round of applause to our awesome leadership panel today. Thank you.